Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the cartoonist behind graphic novels like the pair of Tegan and Sarah books, Junior High and Crush, as well as the soon-to-be-concluded Clementine trilogy at Skybound. It's Tillie Walden. Thanks for coming on, Tillie.
Hey, David. Thanks for having me.
So we're recording this on Friday, June 20th. It is the week before Clementine Book 3 arrives. It will be the week Clementine Book 3 arrives in comic shops when this goes up. How are you doing?
I didn't actually know that. David, I have published so many books. I have been doing this for over 10 years. I don't even recall when they tell me a pub date. I sort of thought it would be out-ish, plus or minus 4 weeks from today. But that's cool. That's good to know. Okay, so it's gonna be out there.
You know, that's one of the things I think is really strange about, there's like the book market book element of it where it's like, oh, it's a graphic novel and it's from Skybound, who is a direct market oriented publisher, which means that you don't have just one release date. You have, this is coming out on June 25th in comic shops. And then I think like July 8th or something like that in bookstores. So you actually have two release dates.
I don't get it.
Comics are confusing, man.
Comics are confusing, and I think it's a legacy of the industry being like, you know, we used to be Marvel, we used to be DC, we used to be floppy, we used to be serialized, and graphic novels in the book market have just really turned everything upside down. And I think that ultimately these two markets have not ever really fully integrated with themselves, you know? Like graphic novel readers, graphic novel sales, more classic comic books are different. But working on The Walking Dead is like living in both worlds because I've never worked on any project where I feel like I have kind of like actual comic book fans reading it.
Right.
I used to just sort of completely be in this like indie graphic novel space.
That is one of the interesting things about it is like you have your fans. So your fans show up and they're expecting a Tillie Walden book. And then you have Walking Dead comic fans who come in expecting a Walking Dead comic book, which in a way, I mean, we'll talk about this later probably, but it's like in a weird way, Cliff Rathburn is kind of like a skeleton key for that because he offers the same tones that he did on the Walking Dead comic.
He is my T. He is my MVP.
He's so great. And like he did really great work throughout the series. But then you also have the added layer of the people who played the game. I'm just going to say that.
The people who played the games. That's a very neutral way to say that.
I played the game, but I also may not have behaved the same way. And so you have these like disparate audiences that you wouldn't normally get, like, you know, spinning.
Yeah.
You get Tillie Walden fans. On a Sunbeam, you get Tillie Walden fans.
Yep.
Are You Listening? You get Tillie Walden fans. And
it's the same group of people.
This time you're just like, I don't even know where these people are coming from.
It's cool. And honestly, it's part of why I agreed to do this trilogy in the first place all those years ago. It was like, it felt like on the one hand, it would bring my work to a new audience. And it also felt like for me, it would be a really good challenge sort of artistically and narratively to work on something very much out of my comfort zone, working on this series. And that's what it was. It was like I've never had to like sort of capital W write so much in my stories. It's like there's real like kind of propulsive plots. There's villains, there's big casts, there's a changing location. And it was hard. Like each book was sort of drafted out multiple times because my inclination as a writer is to lean a little bit more on atmosphere and a little less on narrative. And luckily for me, I had a great editor at Skybound, and Alex helped me kind of find my more Walking Dead self in these books. Even still, it's honestly still a very low-key series. Like, there's a lot of downtime. They spend a lot of time in book 1 just reading the notebook. And in book 3, Clementine's, like, practicing her penmanship. It's still a me book, but it was a lot of fun.
I mean, I have to say, that is kind of fundamentally baked into the idea of, like, a zombie story anyways, because... Yeah. You know, I just watched 28 Days Later because I was going to watch the new movie. And like, there's like decent portions of that movie where they're just like sitting in a gas station because they don't want to die. Or they're like sitting in this room because they don't want to die. And it's kind of baked into it where there's going to be some atmospheric time killing, which sounds not good, but also is, I think, fitting your skills. I mean that in the most complimentary way.
Absolutely. And I think the juxtaposition between downtime and introspection and action and smashing heads is like very important. And I think it's what makes the post-apocalyptic genre and the zombie genre really, really fun. And when I think about it, I'm like, I'm busier than Clementine. Like my modern society, a society that's functioning, creates really busy lives. And these kids are like kind of roving about. Like they don't have to get up in the morning. Like their time is just sort of about survival, but that's a way that human beings lived for so many centuries. And it's only in modern times that we really, like, my focus each day is not finding an animal to kill and skin and cook and eat. It's like, a long list of emails and taxes, and I have to call my insurance company, and I have to vacuum the cat around the cat litter box, and then I have to clean the cat litter box, and then I have to draw a graphic novel, and then I have to play trucks with my toddler.
I mean, it's like kind of survive versus thrive. When you're in survival mode, you have to focus on different things than when, like, I'm not going to say that society isn't a necessarily great place right now, but I will say it is better than a zombie apocalypse, and you're allowed to do things you wouldn't normally do, like play trucks with a toddler.
Oh, yeah. I got clean drinking water. I got a toilet that flushes.
Yeah.
I can take a hot shower any time of day. We're doing great over here.
I am curious. You mentioned the interest. Part of the reason why you were interested in taking on this project was because it was a bit different. Do you like deliberately pushing yourself in directions that you wouldn't normally go in? I'm like that your natural inclination wouldn't take you in?
Absolutely. I really believe in not being too comfortable in your artistic process. And I'm always telling my students this because I think that we see sort of a process where we feel confident in our drawing abilities, confident in our writing abilities, and we have ample time to do that project. That's like the ideal we're all looking for. But I don't think that ideal exists. I think that there is a lot of hope for all artists to have a process where they like what they make. I'm absolutely here for good self-esteem, but there is no perfect situation for a graphic novel. I think I'm like 15 books in, and I have yet to have a book where I actually sort of had enough time or actually sort of figured everything out beforehand that I needed to figure out. And so I think I've decided that as a creator, I might as well just kind of lean into it. And so I chose to do this project because I wanted to, get better and get stronger as a creator. And this was like a perfect way to be very much out of my comfort zone. But I have like all sorts of weird quirks around that. Like I've never drawn a book on the same paper. I always use a new brand of paper, a new size, a new texture for every book. There's no reason to do this. All the paper is fine, but I like feeling kind of like a beginner again at the start of the process because it makes sure that like I never sort of become complacent, and it really does kind of keep me fresh and vivid with each story.
I enjoyed the tools page in the back of the third book where you said that you drew this on cheap cardstock from Staples. That is a quote.
I can't even tell you how cheap this paper is. You wouldn't even use it for a birthday card. It's that shitty. The poor guy who sells original art for me, what he doesn't want to see is that the book I'm currently drawing, I'm drawing on like sketch paper. So it's like,
oh my God,
extremely floppy and thin. Good luck selling those, Sean.
Is that Athenium?
Yeah, Sean at Athenium sells art for me. I don't want to pay for archival paper. I'm not doing it. If the paper disintegrates, then that is how its life was meant to live.
I do think it's interesting, and I'm sure you talk to your students about this. You teach at, is the Center
for Cartoon Studies.
That's it, yeah. I'm sure you talk to your students about this to some degree, but I do think sometimes, I'm not a comic creator. I'm not going to pretend like I know the difference between a Faber-Castell pen or an O2. God, I'm not even pronouncing this right. I can say Uniball Sigma white pen.
Felt tip versus maybe a metal tip, yep.
Yeah, like I'm not going to say that there aren't values in great tools and stuff like that, but I imagine to some degree, the tool doesn't define you as a creator. Like you using like the highest end paper is like maybe a crutch I don't want to say a crutch, but you know what I'm saying? It doesn't define you as a creator.
No, I also think I've learned so much over the years that like when I've had really beautiful, nice sketchbooks, I'm completely paralyzed when it comes to filling them in. But if you get like a lined notebook from Staples, the kind like the 5-star that you used to use in school, you feel drawn to doodle on it. And I think that it also is very much, I think, in keeping with what comics are and what we as an industry kind of represent. Like we are not I mean, we should be treated like fine artists, like they treat comics in France, but we're not. We are kind of the scrappy little kid of the art world. We're the scrappy little kid of the book world. And comics are all about accessibility, all about being able to make them with just such low overhead. Like, no one is asking you where you went to college. No one is expecting you to use 500 series Strathmore Bristol with a $100 fountain pen. No, it's like comics can be made on the backs of receipts with a pencil quickly, easily. And like comics culture is very mixed in with zine culture, which is all about making things cheaply, sharing them with people. So I love it. I think that it's one of my favorite things whenever anyone tells me they want to get into comics. I'm always like, well, like make a comic and you're in. It is a low bar. Everyone is welcome. You don't need an iPad. You don't need Procreate. Don't let anyone tell you you need that. You just need some paper and a friend who has a scanner.
I was just in Juneau, Alaska, where they have this event called Alaska Robotics Minicon.
Oh, sure. Comics camp.
Yeah, Comics Camp. Yeah. So I talked to Lucy Nicely there, and we were talking about how when she was getting started, like she was like, I forgot what she said. I want to say fax paper, but that could be incorrect.
Nice.
But it was like she was drawing on this like really cheap, terrible printer paper and everything like that. And I think that sometimes, like I talked to this one artist named Mike Del Mundo, where he was talking about how he always wants to tap into that energy he had when he was a kid drawing for the first time.
Yes.
And I think sometimes when you're like too precious with stuff, you kind of lose that energy to some degree.
I think so. I also think that you have to sort of cultivate your attitude towards your art. And I have decided to cultivate a very, very low-key attitude. Nothing that I have drawn is particularly precious to me. A lot of my art I've thrown out because I didn't even want it. It was too heavy and taking up too much space. And I think that attitude also helps me when I'm in the thick of it, drawing these graphic novels. I draw a panel with Clementine in it. I screw up how I draw her arm. You know, I've been drawing for 8 hours today. I'm exhausted. What do? Do I freak out about it? Do I try and redraw it? No, I move on. Because it's just an arm. It's one panel in a graphic novel full of images. There is no panel in any of my comics that is perfect. There is no drawing that is kind of, in my mind, all there. It's like they're all just kind of good enough. But a graphic novel is the sum of its parts. It's the sum of all of those panels and all of that effort mixed together. And it can create, through all of those drawings, a beautiful and sometimes perfect feeling. But it's not about always nailing it with the art and the writing. You sort of have to find your way to just kind of get through it. Because what matters more is that you finish the stories you start, is that you actually take the intangible nonsense in your mind and you make it tangible so other people can read it. Like, it matters more that you do that than it matters that you like actually draw something that looks quote unquote nice.
Yeah. You could spend your entire life trying to draw perfect and like
you can.
not get anywhere. Yeah, exactly. It's like,
or go be a painter. Like work on one painting for like years and make it, you know, if that's your path, that's your path. But that's not comics.
No. And you can get lost in that, I think. I mean, it's like the common thing that it comes up on this podcast is like for digital artists, it's like the undo function can be a curse in some ways because you're trapped in a loop where you're trying to like perfect this one element and you may never get there because you're competing against something that's in your head. And that's fine.
The two things that I think are terrorizing young artists are the undo button and the rise of kind of algorithmic sort of reading and scrolling, because the fact that it's endless means it never stops. And I think it is harming our creativity. It's harming our ability to kind of originate and write in our minds. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And I'm grateful that when I was sort of coming into who I was as an artist, there weren't really great options for digital. You needed like a Cintiq, which seemed really pricey and a lot. And you needed these programs that I didn't have on my computer. So I learned to do this traditionally. And that I can just sort of keep doing until the day I die. Like, that technology is actually never going to be obsolete. It's always going to work. It's always going to nourish me. I'm really grateful because if I was born in 2015 and I was 7 years old and someone gave me an iPad with Procreate, you know I'd be drawing my weird gay manga characters on Procreate and I'd be learning a totally different skill set.
Yeah. I mean, you learned the way you needed to get to the creator you are today. Hopefully you never run out of cheap cardstock from Staples.
I never will.
You never will. That you got the market cornered.
Never will. There's always shitty paper waiting for me.
And now, a quick word from one of our sponsors. Love sci-fi, horror, fantasy, and action? Then 2000 AD is the greatest comic you're not reading. 2000 AD has a whole universe of characters from Judge Dredd and Strontium Dog through to Rogue Trooper, Zenith, Shakara, and many more. In every weekly issue, you get 5 action-packed stories from incredible creators including Garth Ennis, Rob Williams, Alex DeCampi, and Dan Abnett. Get a print subscription and it'll arrive at your door every week, and your first issue is free. Or subscribe digitally, get free back issues, and download DRM-free copies of each issue for just $9 a month. That's 128 pages of incredible comics every month for less than $10. And all subscribers get amazing offers like money off vouchers and exclusive products. Head to 2000AD.com and click on subscribe now, or download the 2000AD app and start reading today. And now, back to the show. Do other artists ever, like when you tell them what you work on, are they ever like, what? Are you serious?
Only artists who sort of use certain inking methods that require better paper, sort of like the brush inkers. My wife uses Hitograph, or like folks who use nibs. But no, I think artists sort of get it. Also, like when you just see how long these books are, I've done so many books on Bristol board, it kind of breaks the bank. It's a lot. I redraw a lot in my books because I never get it right the first time. So like when you're redrawing like 50 pages and it's a 250-page book, I also started kind of 5 years into this career drawing on both sides of the paper. And that also helped a lot.
Is that what your pages are like now? Is that what Athenium is selling? Is like two-sided?
Some of them. I try not to send Sean the two-sided ones because I don't even understand how you sell that or how you hang that up in your house. Like, which side do you pick?
I just imagine him like flipping it and being like, "What am I supposed to do with this?" Like,
I know. Oh, poor Sean. He's amazing though.
I do want to bring up something that kind of connects to this before we get into Clementine. But you mentioned these books are long. And the last time you were on the podcast was right before the first book came out. It was in 2022.
Wow.
You said that, I think you said that you were already done with like the second book. Or no, it wasn't that you were already done with the second book. You were already done with, I think, the first Tegan and Sarah book at that point. Yeah. And I was just like, oh my God. But I do have to note, just based off the back of the third Clementine book, that since then you have released 5 graphic novels, you got married, and you had a baby. And like, that's the thing that I think is kind of astonishing about all this is like, it's all a lot, but like life is a lot. And like, you just kind of always have to find a balance between the a lot, I imagine.
You do. And I didn't find it.
No.
In the last 4 years. No. There's no way to do 5 graphic novels in about 4 years and have balance. No, it has been, to be perfectly honest, an extremely difficult collection of years. One of the reasons I pushed myself to do these books was in order to give my wife and I the financial security to have our son, to buy a house. Here I am sitting in my house. My baby's not here right now. He's at the neighbor's house. And so like on the one hand, like I got my reward. Like we doing all these books really quickly gave us some stability for a little while, but it felt a little bit like I was at times kind of being tortured. It was these just such long days drawing. It was, I sit down in the morning and draw until the sun came down. And I learned a lot. I got better at drawing. I found, as usual, wellsprings of strength within me. But I spent a lot of nights just crying because I was like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to get this done. But as with every sort of situation with a book, there's always a reason. And for Clementine, it was like, it's a series. We want it to come out each year. And with Tegan and Sarah, it's a series, and we want it to come out again. And I always want to sort of do my best for my publishers. I want to do my best for my collaborators, but I will never make this many books in this amount of time again. This was a one-off.
Yeah. What is your normal rate of release?
Yeah, I usually do like a book a year, a book every year and a half.
Yeah.
Which is quick.
Right.
This was just a little bit more than that, and it cascaded me over an edge where I was just like, oh my God, this is so many pages. Yeah, it was hard. It was so hard, and it was hard to do it pregnant. It was hard to do it after my son was born. There's no maternity leave for cartoonists. That doesn't exist. I'm a freelancer. I'm lucky to even have health insurance, and I could just sort of not work on my books while my son was little and have them be like a little bit later. But, there was no notion of like paid time off or anything like that. It was capital B brutal, really, really tough. And I wouldn't have gotten through it if my wife wasn't sort of so supportive and helpful, not only with our son, but just kind of like with our lives. But when I wrapped book 3, we looked at each other. We contemplated the years that have passed, and it was like, we can't do this again. This was really hard.
So now you can kind of, I assume you're already drawing your next one because you showed me some paper off to the side.
I am, but I'm doing something radical, which is one book at a time.
My God, that is insane.
Too much. The simultaneous graphic novels was a little rough. Yeah. And like the book I'm working on right now also like kind of has a tight-ish deadline, but it's not so much. I'm not killing myself to get it done. And it helps like my kiddos getting bigger. And I'm changing as I get older. Like even just a few years ago, it was hard for me to always listen to myself when I would be sitting there drawing, craving a break, craving some time off. I've become very practiced at quieting that and pushing myself forward, being like one more page, one more panel, 2 more panels, 2 more pages. And now, it's easier. It's easier to just be like, I don't want to work right now. I got to go make mac and cheese for a very picky 2-year-old. That mac and cheese is not going to make itself.
That's right.
And it helps. It helps. I am seeking more balance. In a lot of ways, I think I have a very healthy artistic process because I like what I make. I'm proud of what I make. I believe in myself as an artist. I believe in my own voice. I trust myself. But I still carry over a lot of toxic traits from the world of competitive figure skating. I grew up just sort of battered by coaches, always telling me to not listen to the cues inside myself about like, you're tired, stop skating. It was always like, shut it down and keep going. And I am still untangling that web and what I need truly is to just find a process that has a little more breathing room in it. Because just because I can draw fast, does that mean I need to draw fast? I don't think it does.
I imagine you get a little closer with every project you take on, especially when there's so many at the same time. Because you're compressing the experience of creating into such a tight window.
Yeah.
I imagine the learnings are compressed to some degree as well.
They are. And there were moments that felt miraculous when I was working on Clementine. When I was working on book 3, I would be sitting there inking, drawing something, and I would realize after I was done drawing it, I never even had the thought of like, wait, how do I draw that? It just was drawn suddenly. And it is so cool. It is such a profound feeling to see yourself in real time getting better at drawing. I love it. I love it so much. And I love that the best way to get better at drawing is not actually like going to school and taking a class. It's just drawing.
Yeah.
And so it means you get to make the things you want to make while also incrementally improving with every page that you make. And I am still shocked by it. Every go around. And drawing comics is drawing so much practical stuff that no one wants to draw this. Like sitting on a chair, a kitchen, a door opening, someone putting a shoe on. When you consider the mechanics of drawing someone putting a shoe on, that is hard to draw. But these are the kind of things that come up in a graphic novel that we find ourselves getting better at it. I'll never forget when I drew the cafeteria table in the second Tegan and Sarah book. It was the first time I ever smoothly drew a table without any agony. And I went over and had to tell Emma, I had to leave my studio and tell Emma, I just drew a table and it was no problem at all. And she was like, what kind of table? And I was like, a round cafeteria table with 5 to 6 people sitting at it. And she was like, oh my God. She understood because she's a cartoonist. She was like, she's like, you've leveled up. I was like, I agree. I've leveled up.
Isn't it funny how like readers, they'll glom on to like very specific things that you would never glom onto, and you're just like, I nailed this table, and I'm like, look at the atmosphere that Tillie Walden brought to this book, and she's like, I killed that table.
I killed that table. I don't give a shit about the gay kissing and all the cute moments. No, it's all about like, oh my God, I drew the railing next to the stairwell, and they're actually both at the same angle, which I always fail to do.
That's tough. That's tough. My wife is an architect, and I'm sure
No
she
way.
still struggles. Yeah. So, I mean, it is funny how like those little things stand out. But all right, let me break down what Clementine Book 3 is. It is, and really the entire series to some degree. I want to talk about that, but it's you writing and drawing with tones by the aforementioned Cliff Rathburn, and it brings an end to the trilogy that stars the beloved character from Telltale's The Walking Dead video game series. Here's the solicit. Clementine finally has it all: a safe place to live, a girlfriend, even a cat. Barnwell the cat shouts to Barnwell, but nothing lasts forever. And when Clementine suffers a loss unlike anything she's ever faced, a new mentor called the Gardener offers her a new family and a new way of living. But at what cost?
God, copy is so mortifying.
I know.
So embarrassing. Let's just read the book.
I always like to be dramatic when I do it, but
I like it. I thank you for helping me promote my book.
No problem at all. I want to start with something that we may have talked about last time you were on, but I honestly don't remember because it feels like a million years ago.
It was.
When you were putting the first book together, did you already know where you were going to go over the 3 books? Because you knew that you had the 3 books. Did you have a plan that took you here?
I did not have a plan. I was a person going on a road trip without a GPS, without an atlas, without any kind of map, maybe even without road signage. There was nothing there to help me.
This explains how you ended up in Greenland.
Yes. Yeah. Each book I just kept being like, Vermont is not far north enough. Let's go, because so much of The Walking Dead is based in the South.
Yeah.
That I was really excited at the prospect of like bringing in New England, bringing in Vermont. And then I was like, oh, what about Canada? And then I was just like looking at the map one day and I was like, what's sort of above Canada? And I was like, look, it's Greenland. Let's go there. But no, it was not planned. Each book was sort of, I was figuring it out as I went, kind of using what I learned in the first story to kind of define the next story, kind of like building on it. The only plot point in book 3 that I thought about way back in book 1 was that I was determined, hell-bent on some kind of storyline where Clementine goes back to school.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this kid deserves to go back to a classroom, because the idea of being torn away from education at age 7, 8 is just like really sad. It's really, really sad. So I was like, I want her to go back to school. And that was all I had. And then this character of the gardener that I won't go into too far has some mechanics to her use of zombies that I did not come up with. That it was Robert Kirkman's idea, actually. When I was working on book 2, he sent my editor an email and was like, I just have this idea about like burying zombies kind of like in a garden. And my editor was like, Robert has an idea about burying zombies in a garden. Just if you want that, it's there. And I was like, okay, guys, thanks. Zombies in a garden. Great idea. And then it totally took off for book 3.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
God, it's really funny how like that process works. But I do want to say I really loved the fact that whole part. I mean, this is a spoiler, but it's not, because you already mentioned it, because they do go back to school. Like there's there's a scene I really love where I may mispronounce it. Ujami, yeah. Yeah, shows up, and she's like kind of a person who teaches at the school and also is kind of one of the leaders of the community in Nuuk, which is where it takes place in Greenland, and comes in and asks all of the kids, what grade were you in when this all started? And it was all like 2nd grade, 3rd grade, like I don't remember. And that's the thing that's like really amazing about this is like we've seen so many like post-apocalyptic stories that are about like dealing with the active crisis and trying to survive the active crisis. But what happens when you get to the other side and you're just like, we're trying to exist? And I thought it was an excellent thing to see that. And then also the contrast with the gardener of like, it's like going back to society on one hand versus like continuing with the path that you've lived on and you might feel like you deserve at this point.
Yeah, I think that the universe of The Walking Dead is a really dark place, because ultimately you just have a population of people that are traumatized and that are continually threatened, endlessly threatened. And I think the idea of living under constant threat, I think people must experience it in war zones. It's like it's something people are experiencing today, is like it's defining and it's altering, like it practically changes our DNA. So I think that, yeah, like there are vestiges of a past society in book 3 that sort of resurface, but it's not the world we used to have. It's still a world very much defined by the potential for violence.
Yeah. That's the thing is, like, I almost feel like for characters like Fen or like Clementine in a real way, especially when she gets to a certain point in the book, it almost feels like they feel like they don't deserve a normal life. And like that's a really fascinating thing. And I think like a fantastic continuation of the character is like, how do you get over the trauma that you went through over the past few years? And the answer is very difficultly.
Yeah, I think that it's one way to handle a narrative about trauma, which ultimately that's what this series is about. That's what I think the video games were arguably about.
That's what the comic was, the main series was about for the most part. We are the Walking Dead.
Absolutely. So I think that like one way to cope with that is for the trauma to stop and to live unaffected for a while in order to heal. But obviously in this trilogy, as in every other Walking Dead narrative, like it's not going to stop. And I think that it's something I think about right now in like what feels like a very troubled time. It's like, it's not going to stop. So how do we live well? How do we thrive? How do we help others amidst all of this chaos? There's no easy answer. We're all trying to square it, just like Clementine is.
So you get the first book, you do that, you move on to the second, you have this whole process. You said that you had multiple drafts on all these, so you were figuring it out as you were going along. I mean, that's the thing that's interesting too, is like, it's not just that you were working on someone else's property. You were also working in like, I have no idea how many editors you've had before this in a true sense, but like Alex Antone is editing you probably differently than somebody else would because he's editing both for making the best book you can, but also universal guidance and rules and things like that. And also like Clementine, like, you know, this is a character that is a very important part of the Skybound empire and all that stuff. How do we get her right?
Absolutely.
What was that part of creating like for you?
You know, it was good because ultimately I didn't have to do the heavy lifting there. Alex and then we had other editors as well that kind of worked alongside Alex reading, especially doing like reads for specifically Clementine continuity, game continuity. Robert always read everything, and he's sort of the one that the universe lives within him. So he's the one who knows when like, that mechanic zombie doesn't really move like that. It was great because they all figured it out. Like I got to stay focused on making the best narrative I could for Clementine. And every round of edits involved narrative edits, but also involved kind of like the Walking Dead edits and the Clementine edits and the continuity edits. And it was all kind of mixed up in there. And I'm very used to like a lot of editorial at this point because I don't script. I just like draw the book immediately. I come up with an idea and I just pencil the book, which is like a fun process for me, but tends to make like a chaotic, not very good book because it's not planned. And so I'm used to editors being like, oh my God, the foundation is flawed in this. Like it's not even that there's cosmetic issues. Like you gotta go back to zero. But so when they would say that and when they had notes and things, it was also in there were kind of ideas about Clementine, thoughts about the games. And by book 3, it was kind of a well-oiled machine because like I knew Clementine, I know the games like the back of my hand. I like everyone was feeling very comfortable kind of where we had gotten to at that point. Book 1 I think involved the most because I was still learning how to like, you know, draw a zombie and like tell a zombie story.
Right.
But we were on our A game, in our A game by book 3, which was really nice.
You say you draw the book, you don't script. Do you like do thumbnails? Is that what you're doing? Or are you like, oh, you go more?
I don't really thumbnail anymore. I used to. Sometimes I'll write out like a loose outline of sort of like plot points, like a bulleted list of plot points, and then based on that plot point, I'll draw pages. But no, it's all a bit arbitrary. I also just kind of pick a panel layout. I've never picked panel layouts intentionally. I decide on the panel layout before I know what is going to be on the page. I just pick one that looks nice. And then I cram the story into it.
You are blowing my mind right now. That is amazing. I think it's great.
Thank you. I think I'm always telling people when you have a description of what's supposed to happen on a page of comics, like a bird walks into a bar, if you ask yourself what panel layout suits that, it's actually like a really hard question to answer. But if you instead just draw 4 panels and then say a bird walks into a bar, shove it in there. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving yourself a structure to build from instead of building the structure off of already knowing what happens. And I think that I think both are valid ways. I just said I never considered that before, and I think that's great.
It's fun too that because I've done this process now on quite a few books, I have like instinctive panel layouts that I go to depending on the type of scene I'm doing. So if it's like a conversational scene, I'm going to naturally panel out pages with more panels. If it's an action scene, I'm going to do more diagonals. If I'm going for some emotional that's when I'm going to lean towards the bigger layouts, more open space. So now it's becoming like I almost kind of like read the mind of the outline, and I'm like, I think you need 3 tiers here. I don't know why.
Also, I mean, I think that you're going for something different than like, do you know who like J.H. Williams III is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he like when he did this run for Detective Comics where he would draw panel layouts where it's like in Batman's symbol. And then he would build everything around it, and it was crazy. But it was like that was the way he thought about it, and he was thinking from like a design standpoint. But you're thinking from like a storytelling, not that he's not thinking about storytelling, but you're thinking very much like, I want this to be a clear story that people can read. And like sometimes like clarity and like when you're going in with that as your focus, you're going to have, I don't want to say a simplified layout, but you're going to keep it focused in a way that maybe J.H. Williams III isn't.
Totally. Yeah, everyone finds their way in different ways. I still love hearing about people's process, even though there's sort of nothing mysterious about the process to me anymore because I've done it so many times.
And now, a quick word from one of our sponsors. This July, one of the greatest creator-owned comic series of all time begins a powerful new chapter. From Oni Press, return to the Eisner Award-nominated world of The Six Gun as creators Cullen Bunn and Brian Hurt reunite for The Six Gun, Battle for the Six #1, an extra-sized comic event told across 3 prestige format issues. In the aftermath of the Civil War, a race to claim 6 objects of enormous occult power began, thrusting the fate of humanity into the hands of an ordinary young woman and a hard-nosed gunfighter. Together, they were our best hope to stop Armageddon. They prevailed, but at a terrible price. 3 decades later, at the dawn of the 20th century, the Six Gun is about to be reborn anew, as it has been countless times across the centuries. The Six Gun Battle for the Six #1, coming to comic shops everywhere on July 23rd. And now, back to the show. So you built out a much bigger cast than when we first started. When the first book started, it was just Clementine walking through the woods, trying to figure out what the hell's going on, hating her Kenny, her prosthetic. But it's grown from there. But when the third book starts, you have Olivia and a baby, and then you have Rika, and you have Sa, and you have it's a growing cast. And so I am curious as to when you're building these books out, like you have the third book. Is Clementine just always your North Star, basically? Like, do you plan everything and orient around her, or are you kind of thinking about the world collectively?
It's a good question. I don't know if she is. It really because it's not really I never really think of Clementine in a vacuum. I'm always thinking about Clementine as sort of an atom bumping against all the other atoms of the story. Like, she's always kind of colliding with the setting. She's colliding with her friends. She's colliding with her girlfriend. So I think, I don't know if I'd be able to think about just Clementine. It's always all kind of swirling around with me. And introducing new characters in each book is a lot of fun because it's a way to keep it fresh. And it's a way to feel like this book is different. Each book I wanted to sort of feel like they were an individual in a way.
That's where the drama comes from.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a really different series if Clementine and Rika and Olivia were still on that mountain back in Vermont. I mean, I bet that mountain would be looking great. If they spent book 2 and 3 working on it, we'd have a nice summer there. It would be beautiful. They'd kill a lot of deer. Maybe they'd meet some odd characters. I don't know if just Clementine is my North Star. I think that what is true, though, is it always comes back to her. So when I'm thinking about the side characters, when I'm thinking about the setting, I'm going on tangents with them as I'm writing in order to find my way back to Clementine. So she's always kind of the final sentence.
You know, we were talking about the school part of it earlier, and we were talking about like the gardener as a contrast and what the gardener offered. And the thing is like if you just thought of Clementine in a vacuum, you wouldn't think about all the things that would change her, and you wouldn't think about all the things that push her in new directions. In a weird way, not to bring us too full circle, but it kind of reminds me of like you saying that like you like being pushed outside the box. You need to push Clementine outside the box to make that drama happen.
I do. And I think that that's part of where a lot of the animosity towards this series has come from is I didn't choose a very classic path for Clementine. I didn't keep her tucked around in the sort of zone of the video game, in the characters of the video game. I have consistently pushed her further and farther from where she was previously. And I think that also really tracks with at least my experience of being a teenage girl. Like, I'm never going to do what's right for me. I'm never going to just stay with the people who love me and who make things simple. I think that actually part of being a teenage girl is seeking to complicate things because you need to create a physical manifestation of the turmoil that's inside of you. And ultimately, by the end of the series, I think Clementine is not nearly sort of as mixed up as she was at the start. But yeah, I think that there could have been a much sort of safer, simpler way to do these books. But why would I do that? That'd be boring.
Yeah. Well, the thing too is this will probably be the only Spider-Man comparison you get here, but like Spider-Man fans have this idea that they want Peter Parker to be married to Mary Jane, and like that's the way it should be, and they want them to be frozen in amber in that moment forever. That's what they think that they want. But the thing is like I mean, this is true of the Walking Dead Telltale fans. And I love those games. Don't get me wrong. But the reason why I like those games is because they're always giving me something I didn't expect versus keeping her in static and in bubble wrap forever. Like the only way you can tell a story is like not keep her in the same place, put her in new situations, put her in like, when I was a teenager, I was a moron. Sometimes you do dumb stuff or sometimes you make mistakes and that's life. And like, in my opinion, like, your books put her in a position where she was able to continue to progress as a person and as a character. I do have to ask, though, like, that's certainly not something you'd never navigated before. How was navigating that side of it?
It was hard. It's really interesting to be despised. I remember early on, like my YouTube algorithm was like recommending me videos with,
oh God,
it seemed like hundreds of thousands of views about how I had ruined Clementine and like ruined The Walking Dead. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to click on this. Like
no.
This doesn't seem good. In a way, it wasn't too bad because it's actually quite easy to persevere in the face of online harassment. You just don't look at it. I have not looked at my Instagram notifications since Clementine book 1. I haven't even clicked on them. Not once. And so the cruel comments, the cruel messages, every now and then they find creative ways to find me and get to me, but they almost never do. And so it keeps me very clear-headed on what my job is, what my purpose is in doing this series, and it quiets it out. I mean, it bums me out because I think that at least with book 1, when I was on the book tour, I actually had a chance to interact with a few people who really did not agree with what I did with Clementine. And after talking with them, I still don't think they liked my books, but they certainly didn't want to harm me anymore. Like they really were like, okay, like I guess I see your point. Like if anyone listening ever actually meets me, I promise I'm a very nice person. And I have nothing but love for Clementine. I have nothing but love for the video game, for this series. So but it's also like, it's just been a new experience. I've never dealt with online harassment like this before. I've never gotten death threats before. I now have. And the like lowest point was just when my mom saw some of it and it was really hard for her. So that sucks. I don't like that, but yeah, it's been unique. It's been unique. It's interesting because I don't want to get into like the niche of the drama of why they're so mad at me, but I think a lot of it revolves around Clementine's role in the video games as a mother figure. And it's been interesting to become a mother while working on this series, because if anything, it's just made me feel stronger in my conviction that to care for someone is complicated, and we are not perfect, and we are not meant to be perfect. And I think holding mothers to this unrealistic standard of a perpetual place to lie on, a perpetual rock for you to stay stable is just insane. And I think that the nuances and complexity of caring for another person, it's just become even more expansive for me as I've worked on this series.
Do you think you see Clementine in a different way now than when you started the books?
Oh yeah, definitely. Just because I used to see Clementine more like a peer, kind of like a sister or a good friend, and now I see her more as a daughter. I see her more as a kid who desperately needs love, who needs stability, who needs someone older than her to guide her, someone to tell her that it's going to be hard, but it's going to be okay. And that's one of the reasons that I brought in these other characters. That's sort of one of the roles that Saw and Derek fulfill in the story, is to kind of be this sort of stable presence for Clementine, kind of like parents, because I see now at the end of this series just how much she lacks in family, but how that can be made up for by all the kind of beautiful people around her.
I liked how you handled them, and how like there'd be this, I don't want to spoil anything, but there'd be situations where they'd run into her and they would be like, we're not going to try to make you come home, but we want you to know this. It was like they were giving her freedom, but they were also being like, you're still cared for. And I think that for somebody like Clementine, like the way that you handled that was very effective.
I'm glad. I mean, I think like it's hard. It's hard when our kids, when our friends, when people pull away from us. But yeah, you just got to kind of persevere, take it one day at a time.
Yeah. Also, you gave her a cat, which was really important. I have to say, you did one of the all-time best cat scenes in any comic. It was, I suspect you know which one I'm referring to. Yeah, I'm a huge, I have 2 cats. I used to volunteer for a cat rescue, and the scene with Barnwell, like his big moment, I was just like...
His big moment, yes.
Nailed it.
That scene was not working. That scene did not have Barnwell in it in the first, I think, 2 iterations of it, and we could not figure it out. And then it came to me. I was struck by lightning, and I was like, God damn it, bring the cat into it, and it'll all work. And it did.
You're like, Kirkman, I gave you your goddamn garden. Yes. What else do you want from me? And you're like...
Here's your garden. I want a cat now.
Actually, the last plot thing I want to bring up is it relates to a core part of The Walking Dead as a franchise, the walkers or zombies or whatever the hell you want to call them. There's a garden. We've talked about that. They are a pretty minor part of the finale, even if they're still crucial in their own way. What made you want to go that route? Was it just about what was right for the story, or was it more about being more interested in the living human side of things?
I think it was about the timing of like how far away we are from the initial sort of influx of zombies. I think that Clementine is 7 in 2003. She's like, it's been like 10, 11, 12 years. I do think that people in this society would, in a way, start to experience zombies like the landscape. Like, yeah. I really think they would be like the way I feel when a bear walks through my yard. Like, I don't want to go anywhere near that, but it's not the end of the world. Like, I've seen a bear before. They've lived through so much with zombies and walkers. I feel like there would eventually be a kind of normalcy to it. And that's what I was sort of interested in cultivating, where like, I think that the walkers are not the biggest issue in this book. And walkers are sort of rarely the biggest issue in this series. And if anything, my editor had to sometimes remind me and be like, can you put a zombie in it, please? Stop getting mixed up with all this interpersonal drama. Please put a walker in it, which was always a good reminder to put a zombie in the background.
Come on, Skybound editorial. Did you even read The Walking Dead? I mean, so much of the drama had nothing to do with zombies.
I know.
I'm sorry I'm slandering editorial, but I mean, it's just like...
No, they're great.
Yeah, it's just funny. But I do want to go back to your life changes, because you wrote in the back of the book, you had a great line. You said, within these pages live some of the most defining experiences of my life. We talked about those already.
Yeah.
How did those experiences color your relationship with the book series, and even the one you did with Tegan and Sarah simultaneously? Like, because it sounds like it was a hard time, but it was also an important time. What are your feelings about all that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all in there. I think that like the entire reason that I put in a plot line where Olivia got pregnant was because I wanted to be pregnant and I was struggling with getting pregnant. And I was like, maybe I'll manifest it if I get this poor teenage girl knocked up in my comic book series. And it was very 1-to-1. And then like Clementine falling in love with Ricka, finding companionship with her was like alongside me finding companionship with my wife, with like deciding to make a commitment to be together for the rest of our lives. It's all in there. It's all like all of the names are names of people in my wife's family at the time. My like new in-laws, my wife's sisters are Georgia and Olivia. Her brother is Tim.
Is there an Amos?
There's not an Amos. We're not Amish enough. No, I know. I wish.
It's such a good name. I mean, it's funny. Like,
it's a great name.
I'm not trying to like bring back Amos or something like that. But when I saw that name, I was like, damn, I haven't seen an Amos in a while. That's pretty good.
I know. No, it's like it's all deeply connected. I think these books are, for me, extremely personal. I don't know if it will be that apparent when you read them because a lot of it is subtle, but yeah, it's been a hugely important couple of years for me. I've made decisions about like where I want to be and who I want to be with for the rest of my life, and that's, it's a big deal.
Do those experiences and how they tether to the work that you do change how you feel about the work?
Oh, yeah. It's not just like, is this book any good or is this book going to sell? It's like this book is like a little piece of my life force. This book has like my skin cells and my blood in it. That's what it feels like. It's really, which is one of the reasons why accepting my books as good means accepting myself as good. It's like a very profound thing because these books are so connected to me that when I choose to love them and I choose to believe that I did a good job on them, then the same comes back to me personally. And it gives me strength as an artist to keep going.
It's funny. I think some people might think that your work on something like On a Sunbeam or Are You Listening or Spinning would feel dramatically different than these projects. But it seems like you don't kind of view things like that. You kind of view like it's all a project, right? It's all a part of you.
Yeah, it's all personal. It's all personal.
All right, we got to give Cliff Rathburn his due. He did the tones on this book. You said he was the MVP. What did Cliff bring to it?
Everything. These books would not look the way they do without what Cliff did. Cliff also toned these books at lightning speed. I think I drew these books fast. No. Cliff toned these books fast. It was incredible. He was I can't even say enough how we couldn't have done. It would not have been possible to do this without him. He was really like, a trilogy of books is a lot. And He was just so committed to like making it beautiful, so committed to like trusting my inks. It was amazing.
Have you ever worked with a collaborator in any regard before like that?
No.
That was probably pretty interesting.
It was. I've never had someone either color or tone my work for me, but it's really cool because you basically just like send them off into the ether of the internet and then Cliff drops a folder back with like all the tones done. It's very cool.
All right. Last question for you. We've talked about a lot of different things and how your life has changed. Your life is linked to your work in a very real way.
Yeah.
What were the biggest things you learned from the experience of making these books as a person? Like, do you feel like a different person on the other side, just like Clementine does?
I do, but I think that one of the reasons I feel different is one of the reasons that Clementine feels different is we just got older. And I think that a lot of the lessons we learn and a lot of the ways we change are not as intentional as we think they are. And it's just how the wheel of time affects us, the passing seasons, how our bodies change, how our minds change, how our memories change. I think that I was always going to be different on the other side of these books because 4 years of my life, all the choices I've made were always going to bring about a different person. And what's cool is that change is imbued into all of the lines in this trilogy.
Yeah, and I think you did a wonderful job, Tillie. I love the books, but that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on and talk about Clementine, your changing life, and everything else. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks so much, David.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with cartoonist Tillie Walden. You can find her work in the Clementine book series at Skybound Comet, including this week's third and final book. As per usual, big thanks to Deanna Chapman for editing this week's episode. Love Off Panel, want to support it? Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify today and give the show a rating or review while you're at it, but 5 stars only. You can also support the show by backing it on Patreon. Find the show at patreon.com/offpanel. And when you back it on there, you get early access to each week's podcast as well as weekly content and more. Want even more? Subscribe to my subscription comic site Sketched at sketch.com for long-form articles, interviews, and the rest of the site's content. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by following it on Blue Sky and Instagram, or following me on Blue Sky or Instagram. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Raoul Allen, Omega Slice, John Walsh, Brandon Paul, Aaron Buzzy, AC, Simon Birch, Austin, Scion, Megan Marsden, T.S. Luther, Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast, Scott Carpenter, Gus, M.K. Frygeist, Saunter, Brian, Chris Robinson, David Byrne, Milton Lawson, Benjamin Wilkins, Chris Hacker, John Neesmith, John Auerbach, Dustin Weaver, Brandon Heyman, Aiden Hammond, Faith Aaron Hicks, Ben Rowe, Cameron Brown, Jonathan Breen, Charlie Stickney, Tom Drennan, Jeremy Thomas Burke, Jared Schwab, Scott Dunn, Chip Mosher, Seth Pomeroy, James McEwen, Andrew Lehman, Christina Merkler, Scott Place, Travis Gibb, Darcy Van Polgees, Tom Evans, Reed Beeman, Kelly Sudaconic, Max Wood, Jeremy Lambert, Brian Neer Levy, Jason Hussa, Kieran Gillen, Jonathan Kent Uratam, Henry Johnson, Dennis Hoffman, Django Boren, James Tyner IV, Chris Langford, Jason Wood, Tom Peachy, Ben Domstead, Rom V, Nick Walker, Patrick Coyle, Isaac Warren, Klaus Vandeven, Submen Industries, Jack Mulqueen, Carl Kerschel, Robert Masella, Elza Chartier, Luke Nakashoji, Dr. Luke, Scott Hazelwood, Canadian by Proxy, Bradley Rader, Carl Troy, Brandon Pills, Patrick Brower, Declan Shelby, Dan Garino, Adam Freeman, Ben Wild, Brian Klein Q, Leona Kangas, Nick Bennett, Susanna Polo, Reed Hinkley Barnes, Mario Tiambang, Robert Wilson IV, Andrew Carita, Stefan Hull, Philip Myra, Chris Pachalo, Torrin Grunbeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Waltz Comics and Books, Akil Wilson, Alex Demetriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Wesley Giff, Sean Kirkham, Julio Anta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Reinwan, Vita Ayala, Akil, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, David Kelly, Jason Assey, Adam Bogert, Matthew Taylor, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, Dave Baraldi, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendrick, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Cheng, Colin McMahon, Adam Heifel, Fiona Staples, Mark Abbott, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to Wolfpack for letting me use their song Outro as the show's opening theme, and to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Off Panel's outro and ad music just for the show. Check out both their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.